Welcome to Talking Cars. I'm Jennifer Stockberger.
I'm Mike Quincy.
I'm Gabe Shanhar.
So this week we are talking about the 2024, our first impressions of the 2024 Lexus TX. Now, this is a vehicle that has been dominating the commercials in my football watching. So
which is a clear indication
that it's new and popular, or could be popular. So a lot to talk about because it's a big vehicle. So Gabe, we're going to start with you. How does the TX fit into the Lexus lineup?
So it fits in beautifully. It's based on the Toyota Grand Highlander, as we all know. And it's for Lexus, it's a slam dunk because Lexus never had a real contemporary three-row car-based SUV in that segment. It had the RXL for a little bit.
Right.
That was a stopgap kind of patch. And they've had the GX, which is basically a pickup truck. So, and that's long in the tooth, dates back to 2010. There is going to be a redesign very soon, but that's besides the story. So, so finally, Lexus has a luxury mid-sized three-row SUV that can compete with the Acura MDX, with Infiniti, with Volvo, with any self-respecting car company that has $65,000-$70,000 kind of SUV there. I mean, it can be a total competitor to an Audi Q7, for instance. And judging by the phone calls that I've been getting about it already, it's probably going to generate a lot of interest in the market.
Yeah, and I'm sure, which is why it's in those football ads. But again, you touched on truck-based, car-based. The GX, as we wrote it, much more designed for towing, a little bit off the beaten path type thing. So the other interesting thing is this three-pronged approach to the powertrains, Mike Quincy.
Right. So we have a TX 350 in our test fleet, and this is powered by a 275 horsepower, 2.4-liter turbocharged four-cylinder engine. It's hooked up to an 8-speed automatic transmission, and the EPA estimates that it'll have about 23 miles per gallon in terms of fuel economy. And just a reminder to everyone out there, we do our own fuel economy tests, so we will come up with the perhaps more accurate number. And I got a lot of, I spent a lot of time with this vehicle, drove it for hours on end one weekend. And only thing about fuel economy was it has a pretty small fuel tank, about 17 gallons, which really didn't give me the cruising range that I thought. I was looking at like 330 miles or something like that. And it's got to do better than that.
You'll be stopping often?
Oh, yes, actually.
And now's the time to mention that Toyota, Lexus likes to give you the low fuel light when you're 20 miles in the range. So what happens if you're like, let's say on the Pennsylvania Turnpike and you see a sign next to rest area 36 miles?
Yeah. So
don't let it get there. Maybe
so there's that.
The
Exactly.
advice. Yeah.
But the next level up is the TX 500H, which we also have in our test program, and this gets a 366 horsepower, 2.4-liter turbocharged four-cylinder. It's a hybrid, and this is hooked up to a traditional 6-speed automatic transmission. We have the F Sport trim, which is kind of the highest, and I don't know if that's just because that was all that was out there when we were trying to buy one, or we really wanted to try a different suspension settings.
No, the 500H only comes as an F Sport.
Okay, well, there's that. That's why we have that one.
Yeah.
And finally, the TX 500H Plus, which is a plug-in hybrid, and we're seeing that more and more from manufacturers offering yet another powertrain option. And this gets 404 horsepower, 33 miles of electric-only range, and it is hooked up to a CVT. So, this last model is sort of a big deal because it is one step closer to what sort of we call, rightly or wrongly, electrification. Right. A lot of people are kind of nervous about going from an internal combustion engine vehicle right into an electric. So doing the plug-in might be the best next step.
Yeah, and I think it's worth just quickly talking about the plug-in, even though it's not the ones we have yet before we get to those, in that, the reaction and as a general average, plug-in hybrids in our reliability were 146% more problematic than their internal combustion engine counterparts. But that is probably not the case for Toyota Lexus.
Correct.
So if there was any hesitation based on the general PHEVs are not reliable, there's different tactics that Toyota, Lexus take to be more conservative, more pragmatic.
Right. And we, as we spoke about in our pre-production meeting, we would all definitely buy a plug-in Toyota RAV4 Prime, which did very well in Consumer Reports testing, excellent reliability.
Yep.
But that is going counter to most of our reliability data on plug-ins.
Yeah, the RAV4 Prime is a very slick vehicle, and Toyota has a lot of experience in hybrid technology for 25 years already. And I mean, what we're seeing is, according to our surveys, that these are bulletproof vehicles with technology that can keep going and going and going.
Right. Even though it's new, even though it's a new powertrain, any of these, even though they're a new vehicle, because they're Toyota Lexus, come with some confidence that they'll be fine. The other thing to me, it still surprises me when you get a vehicle of this size and then you look and it says 4-cylinder.
Right.
Albeit a turbocharged 4-cylinder, I will say it does it very, very well. Right. So, Gabe, let's talk about now the two that we own, the TX 350 and the TX 500H. What do you see in terms of performance?
Yeah, so the 350 has a pretty healthy mid-range torque. You're going to know that it's a 4-cylinder because there is some gravelly sounds, and it's not the old slick V6 that was really smooth and quiet. Just like we said about the Grand Highlander. But the 500H, I bet you're never going to know it's a 4-cylinder there because that powertrain is amazing. Yep. It's quick and it's effortless and it's smooth, and who cares that it has 6-speed automatic.
I know.
You're never going to know how many ratios it has. But here, Toyota really deviated from their traditional hybrid that tends to have an e-CVT, electronic CVT that tends to drone and be kind of monotonous. Here, it's really well done. I mean, this powertrain is really exciting and satisfying on many levels. Plus, I mean, the F-Sport makes the car a little tauter and more agile than the typical Lexus, so it's a different kind of a Lexus there.
And just on Gabe's point, like many of us grew up in households that had V8s and V6s, and it was like, oh my gosh, if you don't get the V8, you're going to downgrade to the V6. And now we're seeing more and more turbo 4-cylinder engines coming in, and with the 500H, you're absolutely, I agree 100%. You would have no idea that this was a 4-cylinder when you take it out, especially on the highway.
Yeah.
Even to me, the 350. You're right.
Yeah,
the noise
I
is there. It's not unappealing to me. It actually is kind of some nice noise. And I think the 8-speed in that, awesome. And, like you say, even the 6 in the 500H, they're really well done. It's almost like a step back, but a step forward in terms of performance. Not a CVT, but then you lose all that funny
the power
flaring
delivery,
and the things that come with the CVT.
Yeah, and I agree with you. The 350, I don't think it was ever lacking for power. It was not as slick as the 500, but it's not like you're trying to merge on the highway and you're waiting for like the turbo to spool up and to come to boil, and it just goes.
Yeah, actually, I'd say the initial takeoff is a bit abrupt, also, in my view.
Right, but my point is not
Meaning
lacking
it has the
for
power.
power.
Exactly.
Right.
So the other way around from a delay.
So you alluded to handling too, touching on that the 500 might be a little more nimble, a little more agile. It's a big vehicle. So Mike, handling wise, ride wise.
I think the 350, hits more of the mainstream in terms of the ride. It is a little smoother, a little calmer, I suppose, than the 500. But that being said, much like we found in the Highlander and the Grand Highlander, it's not exactly an engaging driving experience with the 350. It's sort of it just hits the mainstream, I suppose. The 500H is sort of a different animal. But I don't think I never felt it was compromised. Sometimes if you go the sport route, you give up the ride for handling and whatnot. But in the seat of my pants, the 500H was never too stiff or anything to get the better handling.
Right.
Yeah.
And Lexus typically not typically what we describe as agile, quiet, softer, little less steering feel. Gabe, you agree with handling?
Yeah, totally. I mean, the 350 is very mainstream. It's not going to, there's no chance it's going to be off-putting to anyone. The 500H is to me is a younger, more dynamic kind of a version, and they drive very differently. To my taste, the 500H has a little bit more of a flair to it. Also, it even though it's a large vehicle, as you said, it doesn't. It kind of shrinks around itself in corners. Some of it is due to the little bit of rear steering that it has. And in terms of ride, I think even with the F-Sport treatment of the suspension and the 22-inch wheels and tires, it's nice.
Yeah, and what Gabe says is right. There's an expression in the car world where we say a car drives smaller than it is, and I think the 500H definitely qualifies for that.
Yeah, and we talked about body control, and I know that we said good body control, and I think we caveated that with for a vehicle of this size.
Yeah, I think that's important.
I think that is important because I agree, but I still found in corners when I'm rolling out of my driver's seat even a little bit it's not in the universe great body control, but for a vehicle of this size, it's got great body control. To your point, it drives a little smaller than it actually is. And you touched on the dynamic steering too, which is F-Sport only.
I think so.
Yeah. So it gives you better turn-in, better controllability at higher speeds, but also a better turning circle when you're parking because those rear wheels adapt.
Which is something that most owners are probably more concerned with than trying to, qualify in a Formula One race when they're mainstream family car.
Exactly.
I appreciate that Toyota is putting some sizzle in the TX, the 500H. Yeah. But the day-to-day livability is probably higher on the list for people's priorities.
I still think, and you're right, I think the low-speed stuff is actually where you'll appreciate it more. Right. When you're trying to park and maneuver in tighter spaces.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as obvious as it is in a Mercedes four-wheel steer, but you'll if you're attuned to it, you feel it. And in terms of higher speed handling, it gives the car a little bit of a pointability that is usually associated with rear-wheel drive cars.
Yep. And speaking of bigness, largeness, so again, I go back to the football commercials. There's a lot of adults sitting in that third row in those commercials.
Let's not forget that also, Gabe said slam dunk. So this is like a non-sports guy, and he's a basketball reference, a football reference.
Yes.
Come on.
Keep up, Michael. Anyway, third row. It's an accommodating third row.
Right. It is livable. It is probably perfect for kids, or young teens. When adults go back in there, I mean, the seat is close to the floor. You do kind of feel your knees coming, next to your chin and whatnot. It's not a place that, I'm just under 6 feet tall, but I wouldn't want to spend many hours back there. Right. But in a temporary ride, it's really fine, and it would accommodate most families. I think what's cool about the third row is how easy it is to get into.
Right.
There's this little button on the seat back in the second row. You push it, and the whole thing slides forward. I had a great time, doing a video on this with Anatoly the Great, and we had to do it a couple times to get it right. But it makes it very easy to get into the third row.
One thing I will say, though, that the car comes either as a 7 or 8 passenger configuration, and
that's a good point. Yes.
and if it's if you don't get the bench seat as a middle row, you get 2 captains, and to me that makes the car, for all intents and purposes, a 4-seater, because if you want the 5th passenger with you, instead of them sitting in the middle of the middle row, you're going to have to deploy the third row seat and send them to the back there. Even though it's it's not total penalty box, but still there is an inconvenience there.
To me, where this size vehicle and why it makes it a slam dunk is that and I think if somebody...
I think you should have said home run to do the whole sports thing.
Why it makes it a home run. Goal! No. Why it makes it is not just that you can fit 3 rows. Because there's so many vehicles that have a third row. To me, the differentiator, and I think of anyone who has more than 2 children, is the ability to put the third row up and use it, but also then have room for some stuff.
Right.
So many third row vehicles, you put that third row up, and it's really quite small of what you can put back there. If you have a family and you want to put the oldest child back there and still have the 2 captain's chairs for maybe 2 younger kids, or that second row for two teenage kids who have stuff. This is a really nice vehicle. And it's few and far between, I think, Suburbans that let you have that and sufficient cargo space for stuff.
Perfect soccer mobile.
Yes.
You haven't mentioned soccer yet.
Exactly. There you go. There you go.
Hey, why is there soccer mom? I can't be a soccer dad.
There's a lot of soccer dads, but yeah.
But
There's
no,
a lot.
with the third row in place, you have the room behind to
Yes.
stack 3 or 4 duffel bags. So you're absolutely right. But then fold the third row seat down.
Or some hockey gear, Andrew. Yes.
But fold the third row seat down, and it is a massive cargo area.
Cavernous. Yeah. Or split.
And,
Right.
and the buttons for the power fold, that's very convenient.
Yep. So yeah, that's to me the differentiator is you can still put some stuff inside, fit and finish, controls. Gabe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so in typical Lexus fashion, it's plush inside, and there are a lot of soft touches and exposed stitching and high quality switch gear and whatnot. But if you look closely, you might, and if you're familiar with Toyota products, you'll see some commonalities there, which some people may or may not appreciate.
And a larger screen in the Lexus over, say, our Grand Highlander. So, but I do think controls-wise, and we've talked about it on other, we talked about it on the RX, that they've come such a long way from the touchpad. And I found this pretty easy to navigate. And what I like is they have the large screen, but they also take advantage of the large screen.
Right.
So many infotainment systems have the large screen, but there's so much white space that the selections are still rather small.
Right,
The
or
Lexus
if you
does not
hook
do
up
this.
Apple CarPlay or Android Auto,
Right.
there's this
And they're really big.
there's this unused space on some screens,
Yeah.
and with the Lexus, it really is really efficient use of space. And as we talked about in other podcasts, it always seems like as the cost of the vehicle goes up,
Yep.
the level of complication to operate it also goes up.
Yes.
So it's nice to see that with this Lexus, which is a premium vehicle, this is not an inexpensive car.
No.
That you don't have to be standing over someone's shoulder to explain
Tell them
how to do things,
operate it, yeah.
except for the gear selector, which definitely takes a little getting used to.
Yeah.
To have to move it to the left and then down for drive or up for reverse.
And it's that monostable. It goes back.
Right.
So yeah, not
And I think once you if this is your day-to-day car, I think it will be second nature. You won't even think about it.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, well, why did they do it that way?
Yeah, I think some people are going to have some problems with the screens, not the infotainment screen, which is pretty easy to navigate, but the instrument panel cluster.
Yeah.
There are a lot of configuration abilities, a lot of choices, and that can be quite a bit confusing depending on what the information you want to view.
And we like the idea of tailoring, but if you're not using it, it can be confusing. If you don't take the time to say, okay, what do I want to see in front of me all of the time?
Too much customization can often just send you down a rabbit hole. Or you have something that you like, and then you switch to a different screen, and then you can't find it. You can't go back to it.
Right. And then
if you spend too much time with it, then the car has DDMS, direct driver monitoring system, so
it tells you.
It'll know that your eyes are not on the road.
Yeah. And you're leading right in. You're just guiding me to safety. Toyota's with its Lexus Safety System Plus 3.0, everything we want it to have at a bare minimum. But it also adds some rear catastrophic warning. One thing I like, we talk about front over, this idea of not being able to see what's in front of you, particularly with vehicles of this size, is the feature we've been kind of testing for, and we really like is if you're approaching something, be it a pedestrian, a child worse, or something, it automatically gives you the camera view and says, and a warning, hey, here's what's in front of you, don't go any further. Blah, blah, blah.
But even just parking.
Yes.
I mean, low speed, just coming into the parking lot of a grocery store, and you're parking, you're creeping up to the car in front of you. It gives you an idea.
Yes, it tells you.
And if you want to be appreciative of these sensors and these cameras, go drive a car that doesn't have a backup camera, and you will realize just how awesome they are. We have
and how
one
used to them
we have one in my household that I drove last week. I oh my gosh, I put it in reverse. There's no backup camera.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So, yeah. And then finally, I do think some people will appreciate, because it's important to them, that this is the first Lexus to be produced in the Toyota plant in Princeton, Indiana.
And it's
American assembled.
not unprecedented for Toyota to produce cars in the United States. They've
Correct.
literally been doing it for decades and doing it quite well.
Yeah.
As we see. So just finally, okay, you mentioned the Grand Highlander. Comparisons to the Grand Highlander, the first of which is about $10,000. You know, the whole range, $53,000 base for the TX and $43,000 for the Grand Highlander. Are you getting your money's worth with the Lexus TX? I'm just looking for your impressions.
It's a difficult question. It's a very individual question.
Yeah.
So I think you get something in the plusher interior, and you get the ability to have the advanced driving system, like with the lane change assist ability that we have in our 500H.
Yep.
So there are some things that whether or not they matter to you is a different story.
Yeah.
But $10,000 is not, that's real money.
Yeah.
And for a lot of families, because again, we'd go back to this as a family car.
Yeah.
That's a lot of coin, and I kind of I err on the side of a nice interior, because you're spending time in this car.
Right.
So to have nice exposed stitching and nice to the touch leather, wood trim, aluminum trim, all that stuff is very nice. But if it's worth the $10,000, I don't know. I mean, because it's still probably even, because the cheaper, it's not like the more expensive model is going to be more reliable. It's still
They're
got
both
the same
be great,
same
yeah.
really good guts and components in
Yep.
it. So
And to be fair, you have to say that the Grand Highlander is also available, that same hybrid system in the Max. So I mean, and that comes up to $60,000 as well. But in the real world, I think that I doubt that you're going to find a lot of people that are debating between getting a Toyota or the Lexus. If you're drawn to a luxury brand, you're going to compare the Lexus to an Audi or an Acura or an Infiniti.
For me, and you hit exactly this is a family car.
Mm-hmm.
So I literally sat in both and said, okay, which would I do? And because, like, you think of the 500H with that like suede-like insert, I think I would go with the Highlander, because families are messy.
right, depending how old your
Families
kids are.
are messy. And I'm thinking, I would not want them wrecking my nice suede inserts on my doors or all of that. I think I would go with the Highlander for a dirty, soccer cleated, football playing, basketball sweaty kids.
Speaking of
car.
doors, and one advantage that the Grand Highlander has, it doesn't have those electronic door handles
latches.
that the Lexus has. The
Traditional shifter.
That's a good point.
Yeah, because I still don't get along with these handles. You walk up to the car, you want to open the door, there's always this delay. And when you want to get out of the car, you always are looking for that button. And if you have somebody else in the car that doesn't know, especially at night,
Right.
you always have to explain to them how to get out of the car.
Mike said, every passenger you have to tell how to, because they pull it. And you can.
It's
but
hard.
doesn't do
It's hard
anything.
to understand why the
an
engineers
electronic button.
in
Right.
Toyota or Lexus, thought this was a good idea.
Yeah.
When it forces you to explain someone how to use something simple, like how to get out of the car.
I know. We've done it the same way for so long. Again,
all that being said, I still really like the
I really like
interior
this,
of the
yes.
Lexus.
Oh,
It's very,
absolutely.
very nice to drive.
just not for kids. Anyway.
Oh, one more thing about the Lexus, the name, the TX. Do we think that they chose TX because Toyota's U.S. headquarters is now in Texas?
Could be. Could be.
I
Very
honestly
nice.
never thought of that.
See, another
That's
little bit
interesting.
of Americana to go into our Lexus. So again, that's our first impressions. Obviously, both of these TX, and I'm sure eventually the plug-in hybrid will go through our full battery of testing, and we'll see where it falls. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for those final test results. So moving on to questions from our audience. We love them. Keep them coming. If you want to do an email or a video clip, talkingcars@icloud.com. And our first question today is from Grant. And Grant writes, the lease for my 2021 Jeep Wrangler 4xe is coming due in April. With the highs and lows of the current car market, I wanted to get a jump start on what to do at the end of my lease. Buy it, trade it in for a new model, or walk away. The car is in great shape and is under the lease mileage limit. My lease buyout is around $36,500. But to my surprise, all of the offers I have received are well below $30,000. However, when I look online sales sites, the asking price is anywhere from $42,000 to $45,000. I understand dealers need to make a profit, but is this trend of low market values due to people paying over MSRP the past few years? Could the EV market be affecting its value? Suggestions, please. Mike, I'm going to toss it to you first for Grant.
Well, while I do this at home with my wife, I answer a question with a question, which always drives her bananas. I will ask Grant a question for his question.
Right.
It's how much do you like your vehicle?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like driving it? Because a Jeep Wrangler is not just, it's not a Toyota Camry. It's not a Honda Accord. This
It's an icon.
Yes.
But this is a vehicle that requires a lot of compromise. It's hard to get into. It's hard to see out of. It gets, terrible gas mileage when you're not doing the...
After 3 years, he already knows that.
Yeah, right. But I guess my point is, has it worn out its welcome? So do you like living with this car? Because if you like it, it's running well. It's not a reliability nightmare, contrary to Consumer Reports reliability data.
Right.
And you benefit from the fact it's a plug-in hybrid.
Right. So if you like it, maybe you want to stick with it.
Yeah. And you've already paid in your lease part, so you're still walking out at $36,500 better off than $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 over sticker on something else.
And are you using the plug-in technology?
Yeah.
Are you regularly plugging it in and driving the EV miles as it's designed to do?
Are you using it, utilizing the technology? Right. My story was my absolute real story of getting rid of our lease vehicle, which I think I've shared on the show. My daughter, we did this in college. It was mid-COVID. When, again, those lease buyout rates are set when you take the lease. So in the middle of COVID, we bought out that Subaru Impreza for her at $15,600. We literally had an offer in our hand. I could have printed it out and walked into a CarMax the next day and sold it for $19,000. So Grant, if you don't like it, I would absolutely look at those sites, get an offer in hand, either use that to leverage the trade-in, or maybe you do buy out the lease, even if you don't like the car, for $36,500 and turn around and unload it for $42,000, $45,000 as you're being offered.
So it's in a good place.
Well,
you're in a good place.
As we talked about, it isn't. It's unprecedented, sort of, to buy a new car and think it's going to go up in value.
Yeah.
And since COVID, we've actually seen this happening. The advice that we've always give out: the second you drive a new car off a dealer's lot, it goes down in value. It's a depreciating asset. But then we have examples of your daughters or the Ford Maverick hybrid, which you could buy one, turn around and sell it probably for more than you bought it for.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
and we
crazy.
see it in our car sales
Exactly.
here. And it's a Jeep.
Right.
So a loyal, willing market always. So Grant, hopefully that's helpful. Second question comes from Leslie. Lots is published that EVs are cheaper to run and maintain over the long haul. What about plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, where you have both the electric and the fuel systems to maintain? This comes right back around to the conversation we just had about the TX. And logically, you have the parts that are now a gas engine, and now you have the parts of an electric motor plus the charging infrastructure. So as a plug-in electric vehicle, you have all the more components that could go wrong. What we've said, though, again, coming back around, if you're getting a plug-in hybrid, so that's the maintenance part. But if you're getting one from an already known reliable automaker on a reliable platform like the Lexus TX plug-in when it comes, that's your best bet. But Gabe, running costs, there's two questions there, maintenance and running, and the running costs.
It depends who you are and it depends where you are.
Yep.
Because if you're going to benefit from driving on the electric power and you have the opportunity and the discipline to charge it frequently, in most cases you're benefiting because the prices of electricity are more stable. Although you have to, and that brings me to where you are, because
Right.
there are some places where the gas prices are high and electricity prices are low, and vice versa. And there are some places where both are high, like California, and some places where both are low, like Florida.
Right.
So it really depends on these factors. Also, depending on your driving pattern. If you do a lot of local driving and you can get by with 30 miles a day on electric power and come home and plug it in, you're golden. If you do a lot of cross-country trips, then be aware that your fuel economy, when the car operates as a regular hybrid, may not be any better than a normal ICE car, internal combustion engine car.
It's all about being able to use that electric.
All right, and it's assuming that Leslie lives in a place
Right.
where she can plug it. Because
Right,
if you
true.
live in a condo, if you live
Right.
in an apartment, you live in a city,
Right.
you don't always have access to a way to plug in overnight. If you have even if you have a house and you have to park on the street, that also might be an issue too. So this is these are the continuing evolution of EVs and plug-in vehicles that we're seeing here.
Yeah, another cost factor is the tax incentive that you might get on the plug-in hybrid if you qualify, depending on the battery size. So it's either going to be a $7,500 or $3,750. So that's something to take into account.
Yeah, if your monthly costs are lower, payment is lower, maybe some running costs all balance out. It's a big calculation.
It's as
what
you
you're saying.
say often, it's complicated.
It's complicated. It's complicated. So thank you. That will do it for this show. Please always keep your questions coming. TalkingCars@iCloud.com. And thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we will see you next time.